Voices hum like whispers in the deep dark night.
Welcome to the AI Riff, where we cut through the noise and break down the top AI stories of the week with real talk and real relevance. No hype, no fluff, just a vendor-agnostic take on what's actually shaping your world today. Whether you're in tech, lending, or just trying to make sense of the headlines, we're here to separate the wheat from the chaff and the facts from the fiction. Now let's get this started with your hosts, Mario DiBenedetto, Rob Katz, and me, Kyle Meyers. We hope you enjoy this episode of the AI Riff.
Today on the AI Riff, we explore Cursor plus Koala plus K-Prize plus ChatGPT Agent plus China plus AI security.
Wow.
Well, all right, let's kick this thing off, man. Stick around. As usual, the answers will surprise you.
As does our pauses. These are pregnant pauses that we use just to keep the audience just on the edge of their seat.
Well, you know, they've just been listening to like the music for like half an hour on the intro. So, you know, we have to kind of jolt them back into life. If this is like you know, the paddles. There you go.
There we
Are
go.
you awake yet?
Well, how can we top last week's? I mean, last week's was awesome. We got some good feedback from it. I know Rob heard some good feedback.
I actually now know two people. Actually, they're watch /
at least 2 million people. Yeah,
that's right.
You left 1 million off there, Rob.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can keep it moving again today. So,
well, why don't we dive in?
Yeah. All right. So, for those that follow, like usually what we do is we pick 3 articles, we weave them together, try to tell a story. We got full of ourselves this week, and the first subject is actually 3 different things all lumped together to kind of bring one theme right into this first segment. And so there's these 3 different things that happened during the week. One was the company Cursor acquired the company Koala in an effort to expand their coding capabilities. There was this separate competition for AI called the K-Prize, where let's just say there's some room for improvement. And then ChatGPT came out with their agent capability, which is supposed to be like the next gen capable of doing stuff on behalf, theoretically without coding, that's out there. So this all combined into this, there's a lot going on with the coding world in AI, and not shocking, but to me, it's really one of the most compelling things that's going on, because it's a really hard space, but it's also clearly people see there's a lot of upside here.
I don't know. I thought the exciting part was when they mentioned that AI is being sheltered or being programmed not to create a bioweapon. That was pretty impressive to me. I'm glad that they're at least thinking about that.
I thought one of the more interesting things that hopped out on the article that, Mario, I'm surprised you didn't leap on, was it was talking about the chat agent, and they mentioned Klarna and used the reference about how they fired 700 people, but didn't do the follow-up that hasn't worked out for them, and they had to rehire a bunch of humans. So they pulled half the story out of that one benchmark company that's constantly in the news, right?
Can I tell you that that's like a major frustration for me is the delayed effect of news. Like there's so many publications and people who are like a month behind, and a month behind in the AI world is like, you might as well not even mention it. And it's just so confusing because you see these things where somebody publishes it and it's like, that's so out of date already. Like we've passed that.
Yeah. So I'd like to jump in on the Cursor one. I say this at every show. I'm not a developer, but I'm vibe coding with Cursor, right? And so I was interested when they bought this CRM company, Koala. Didn't understand that. And my take is, if you read through the article, they're shutting that division down in September. So they laid out a bunch of cash to hire talent. And I don't know anything about Koala's tech stack. I don't know, but it's got to be comparable to the tech stack that the guys at Cursor are doing, and they just need talent. And I'm getting really weird mixed messages about what's happening in the software employment space right now. It's impossible for people to find jobs, but there's companies throwing out, big dollars to find people with the right skill set. So was this really just a move to buy talent? It's the only thing I can think of, because buying a CRM doesn't make any sense. That's kind of part one. Part two of it is, I'm using Cursor as a hobbyist. Most of the people on Reddit that I follow, that are in the Cursor subreddit group, talk about it more from like a hobbyist type of thing. They're moving into the enterprise corporate space and trying to take on Microsoft and Microsoft's GitHub Copilot, which is really the de facto one that is used by enterprise companies, right? And so they need talent, and they are going to be growing and focusing on the enterprise space. Hopefully what they add will be valuable to those of us that are hobbyists and individual users, but it really shined the light on just how big Microsoft is. They're quiet. I don't really hear a lot about GitHub/Copilot in the coding space as much as you hear about Cursor and some of the Google tools that are out there. But clearly, Microsoft is dominating that space with their integration in VS Code.
Yeah, and the second thing that I mentioned, the K prize, right? To me, is like, it's like the other end of the spectrum. So I'll just side point, unrelated to the specific acquisition of Koala. There is a lot of energy around Cursor. Yeah. Cursor as a coding tool clearly has mind share for whatever the things it's really proving itself to be good at. But this K-prize test, it structured itself specifically so that AI models couldn't pre-train on what the exercise was. And I want to say, just the way I read this, it basically tells me it feels like most of the other measures of AI coding are rigged. And I'm exaggerating the rigged thing, but it's basically saying, well, they've kind of pre-trained on the same exact type of thing. So of course they're going to be able to answer the questions to the test. And the K prize was like, you don't know what it's going to ask you to do beforehand. And it only got like 7.5% pass rate or something. Like, it was horribly,
So let's notch it up 5,000 feet for folks who weren't familiar with the K prize. It was a competition that somebody put out that said, come to the table with your LLM model, and we're going to go to GitHub, and we are going to, once you've submitted your model, we're going to go find bugs in open source projects, let your model loose on that bug, and see if you can fix it. And only 7.5% were we were only able to fix 7.5% of the problems that were served to the different models. So here's my take. It's a really interesting benchmark, but I don't believe it's a valuable real life benchmark, because what I look at is, how good is AI compared to humans doing the work? And a human being is going to have access to the project, all the files that are in there, a scoping understanding of what the software is supposed to do. Now go tackle those bugs. And when I dug into this K-Prize competition, they didn't get access to the whole project. The models weren't told what the software was supposed to do. It was, here's a file with some bugs in it, and here's a couple other files you can resource to see what the code is about. So kind of an unfair test. I mean, I get it that it's on the extreme other end. And when a model can come to the table and succeed well with those parameters, it's going to be a phenomenal, that model's going to crush and rule the world. So I like it, but I didn't love the structure of it, because I didn't feel like it was a real life assessment of an AI tool. But to your other point, Mario, the other benchmarks are, hey, here's the problem set. Go build a model that exactly solves this problem set, and then we're going to test how your model does. And you score the 75, 80% type of thing. So it's a radically different test. So I don't want to compare the two benchmarks and say that they're different. It's a different kind of benchmark. It had very interesting results, very disappointing results, but it was also so limited in capability that I'm not surprised in how the results came out.
So what do you think the margin of error is on the, I mean, I know it's 7.5, but do you think the margin of error is more than the actual test results themselves? Like, do you feel like the test itself is unfair? Is that what you're saying? That it's unfair to give it that, and that 7.5 is not a good reflection of actually its capabilities?
The problem is we don't know, right? So let's just imagine, right, if somebody had all good explainer files on their code, and you did what Rob said, like that alone, maybe that makes a difference, right? We don't know. Maybe there's an L prize coming up that's going to, be one better. It's going to go to 11.
Yeah, I think what I would be interested in is go grab a senior software engineer and put them in the exact same scenario. Hey, go fix these bugs. You don't have access to the project and no understanding what the app's supposed to do. Can you fix these bugs? And how would they perform? If I had a human benchmark to compare to, I'd be much more confident in answering your question, Kyle.
Yeah,
Yes,
that'd be
it's an
fair.
interesting benchmark. It's an interesting trial, but it's not one where I'm going to go, oh yeah, this AI stuff can't code and only get 7.5% right. It was a very limited scope of experience that was there.
So I want to put a qualifier right before I say what I'm about to say, which is the qualifier is OpenAI's GPT-5 is due out, it's imminent. So at that moment, everything I say from here on may be completely irrelevant and wrong as usual.
Right.
But unrelated to coding, there was this other study where they took research and they had AI summarize the research, and they specifically used research where humans had actually done a summary already. And so they had a human version of experts who had done a summary of, and the point was it had to be really intensive, right? And that particular study showed that AI strayed from what it needed to do. Now, very different than coding, right? And I think it kind of goes to one of the things I wanted to just get your 2 cents on was when I blended in this ChatGPT agent, right? Now, ChatGPT agent is very much so ChatGPT agent is basically this AI should be able to spin up and do anything you can do in a browser, like a virtual desktop. It should be able to do that virtually and execute on whatever it is. So it could open a spreadsheet or go to a file or like all kinds of stuff, right? And the premise is that, nobody needs to write any code to do it. And so we're still in this somewhere between AI writing all the code, but there's still lots of code, and AI saying, no, I'll just do it. No code required. And Google came out with Opal in between even us putting these articles together. And Opal kind of does the middle ground. It actually transforms your request into widgets that each do a piece of what you asked, kind of like code. Like, is there room to have both worlds, right? Will we end up in a world where AI just does a lot of stuff and it's effectively coding, but you don't need to know, and you still need cursor and you still need something to write code?
Yeah, I think for a couple of years to come, I think it is going to be a blend of that stuff, and it's going to come down to what we've said on many of our prior podcasts. For those of you who listen to the first 10 of them, is these are all just tools. And human beings are going to take advantage of these tools. Human beings who understand how these tools work, what the benefits can be, and how they can make something happen to them are going to take advantage of Opal widgets, or they're going to take advantage of the new chat stuff that's going to come out to streamline either their own work or then take that to market and try to streamline what other people are doing. But I think it's going to be a messy space for several years to come. And we all kind of have this responsibility to ourselves to keep up with it to some degree, so that if there is some widget out there that would make my day better, how do I learn about it? How do I know about it? How do I use it and implement it, as opposed to, well, I'm going to ignore that whole space and not take advantage of what's out there. I think the majority of the people are too busy that they're going to ignore it, right? That's why they're tuning into this podcast to hear what, the three knuckleheads that we are think of what's going on out there to help them learn and get their hands around this error. But I think it's going to be very, very messy for a couple of years.
So, by the way, there's an 83-page study that I was reading, and no, I didn't get all the way through 83 pages, which gives more formal names to those, I think, to basically those two types of things AI could do. And we're only talking coding, but it's more general. There's this concept of it being a general purpose technology. Examples are printing press, the steam engine, the railway, electricity, and
the internet.
Yeah. Things that just become pervasive and they are underneath a lot of stuff. But that's different from a method of invention. They use this term, and I guess it's a common term in research circles. So a method of invention is this tool lets you invent all kinds of new stuff. So it becomes the foundation that helps grow things. And so that's what in my mind, that's the translation, right? That part of what we were just talking about with code is some of it is to create something completely new, but you wouldn't have created that something new without it, right? So the example is the personal computer. They actually used machine learning, the printing press, and I'm clearly looking, the telescope, the microscope, right? These things opened up worlds that didn't previously exist. And because they open up worlds, all new things came from it that aren't necessarily dependent upon it, but wouldn't have happened without it. So,
so how
that's our lesson.
disruptive? You look at those, like the railroad, the just transportation in general, the microscope, and how disruptive. I look at it from a disruptive factor. Like, how disruptive were they at the time? I mean, the printing press was very disruptive. I mean, in a good way. And so was most of these things are all positive impacts on society. And then you hear all the people out there talking about, and I get back to my statement about telling AI not to create, biochemical weapons and mass destruction. So I'm sitting here saying, well, where are we? I don't think we can judge yet, because you're looking back at all those things like the microscope that's the history will tell whether it was a positive disruptor or a negative disruptor. But I can't imagine it's not going to be a positive disruptor. But then again, nothing this powerful in all aspects of life. What is it on par with? What other invention, what other standard that was set for human innovation? What other standard is AI compared to?
So there's too many things in the history of the world, right, that you could say the standard isn't the same standard, but it's a relevant thing. Like,
right.
People would talk about, horseback as a way to wage war, and how the people who knew how to ride horseback completely dominated people who had never adopted the concept.
Well, like gunpowder would have been
similar thing, right?
A big disruptor.
I wouldn't necessarily compare it to that in the way that it's not necessarily a solely war-based thing, right? It's so much broader.
Gunpowder used to drill holes, to blow up stuff, to make room for different things.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just look at it from the disruption standpoint, and it did worry me when that article dropped into the whole, wait, you got to tell it to do what or not to do what? Isn't that on the person? That's like, how do you tell it not to do that? Like,
so Anthropic is getting a lot of props in the media for being the company who's trying to protect against all that, right? That they have a mantra as a company that they're going to have the safest model. Now, I think just because the way our media is skewed, that's the safest amongst the ones that we, focus on, the US models. I can't really say that I know in any depth how much DeepSeek or Kimi K2 or any of the Chinese models or the other models, whether they're safety centric or not. But it does kind of bring us to into the second subject.
Yeah,
right?
Great segue.
Right, which was this article about China's approach to AI, and we've touched on it in a certain way about it being open source, making it cheap, right, and everything else. But this article went a little deeper into the idea of part of doing that is to enable the things that will get built, kind of like talking about the method of invention, right? The things that will get built that the society can use and get them started, right? Start creating things that society leverages of AI as soon as possible and put it into society. And that's just way different than, I'll say, the American way, right? The American way is disruption. It is throw it out there, and whichever gets the best mind share takes over, and people just start running. And it's going to be really interesting to watch, because
what kind of dovetailing off what you were just talking about before, let's back up a little bit, right? So China's AI models were forced to be built very cheaply and running on inexpensive equipment because they were limited from getting access to the fancy NVIDIA chips and other chips that the US built their stuff on. As a result, their whole ecosystem for AI is people can go grab models and fork them and do what they want to go do with them. So how do you control, hey, limit this model from being able to generate biowarfare if it's workable and somebody can go change the weighting and what comes out of it? And there's only so many controls you can put into place about limiting what the AI is going to be able to do. So it is, to answer Kyle, your question, it's the wild, wild west from that perspective of safety, But to reverberate on one of the points that you made, Mario, is on the US, we are blind to what the models are. We can't see what the biases are, what the weightings are, what decisions are going into the trainings and stuff like that. And we're building our ecosystem of applications and utilization of these black boxes, where in China they're not black boxes, they're white boxes. People can understand what they are, and their focus is on go build as many different applications to take advantage of this stuff that you understand of how it is that it works. So they are really very, very different worlds of AI tech, and I have no idea which one's going to come out on top, right? And so, the benefit to the U.S. side is there's because these, they're not monopolies, but duopolies or triopolies or whatever. There's so few companies that have the focus of and control over our AI experience. They're in very powerful positions of what that future is going to look like. And China is a very distributed open model with many, many, many companies building applications that aren't necessarily going to get wiped out by these, by the giant ones that are there. So, time will tell which was the better strategy. And they're kind of off each other at the same time. But yeah, it's good. It's interesting. It is very, very different between the two players.
Well, it seems like that's just, as Mario simply said, the American way. I mean, in a capitalistic society, you tend to hold that intellectual property as your secret sauce, and you say, well, we have this, and you don't know, it may be exactly the same as yours, but you don't know if it is or it isn't. And then it becomes down to sales and marketing and the ability to, Google runs a sales engine, Amazon runs a sales engine, Facebook runs a sales engine. They all sell. So if they're gonna go open source, then it loses some of its it's still saleable, but it loses its mystique, so to speak.
Yeah, the
That was
business
really
driver
scratchy.
gets taken away from the company. What's the point of them investing in all that sales and marketing effort
Right.
if their stuff
And
isn't
then
out there?
so
Right?
that's why, like China, this Kimi too, they're lowballing the whole industry on their model, because that's not their model. Their model is for integration into everything so they can make money on everything, a little bit on everything. As my friend always says, I'd rather have a bite of a watermelon than a single grape. Um, so,
Can,
and
can we all give our stupid sayings like that all at once? I,
yeah,
I, had, I had somebody instruct me that a fast nickel's better than a slow dime.
fast nickel. Yes, because you have the money to leverage sooner than the other. I get it, but that's kind of where I was thinking of it with, and that's going back to a couple episodes of the midriff we had about Kimmy, and it all ties in together with this China, wanting to be integrated. I mean, how many open source things do you know of right now that are the leader in the market, other than Android? I mean, it's not a
I'll
model
admit
that
it's.
really
I'll admit
bodes
it's not
well
my.
for
It's not my
profitability.
strength. So
Yeah.
what do
What?
I know? I don't know because I don't know open source. That I know. It. So for
So
the layperson,
so that's an even better question. Why are there so many Apple people that it isn't open source, and you do have to get into their Play Store with all these catches and hooks and whatever, or you could be in an Android and you could, you know, have a little bit more open source. I wouldn't say it's true open source, but it was developed on that premise. And I don't know. I'm just sitting here saying, well, why is China going open source on this?
So can we level set for non-geeks? And I do have an opinion on open source, because if I was building an enterprise app, and I'll just say like an LOS, I may have 50 open source libraries built into my platform.
Yep. Yep.
So open source is a fundamental part of a lot of existing software development. So there is a lot of open source. What there isn't really is open source at scale, right? That like these LLMs as open source is like a whole new animal. Now, to be fair, Java is open source, right? So
yeah,
it's pretty pervasive. It's pretty fundamental.
But
so
how do you make money? Is there anyone making money in a capitalistic way off of just Java? Do you just buy? I mean,
yeah. So doesn't Oracle own it? It's like Red Hat, right? Why did IBM buy Red Hat?
Yeah.
Right. It's because you end up doing so many things on behalf with the open source for people. And then you actually, because open source is a little, I don't want to say it's Wild West. It's not, but because open source somebody can fork the code and do stuff, whatever, like people pay to get stable open source, which it's a little bit wonky to think about, but it's like, okay, you're going to control my open source so I don't get something introduced into my open source that is not something I really want, which is what companies need, right?
So you're saying safety
and control, yeah,
support.
Predictability.
And support.
Yeah, and support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to bring two ideas together, though, that Kyle and Mario, you guys were talking about. So let's go back before we introduce this whole China-US difference in how things are done. And we talked about the fact that OpenAI is about to come out with their new chat thing that is a operator/agent combined in one, doing all sorts of stuff. And Kyle, you were mentioning about, building these applications on top of this open source library and everything. I've been advising my friends and family for the past 2 years. I would not invest money in companies that are building applications that sit on top of and are dependent on these giant AI engines, because they do stuff like OpenAI is about to do. When they release this thing that's got all these agents and operators built in together, I can't remember the word that they use that brought it all together. How many startups are they displacing that were trying to do that with their API calls to OpenAI's back end? That's not happening in China, because China that's the ecosystem they're trying to build there, is build applications on top of these platforms, right? So
I was watching, do you guys know Andreessen Horowitz?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I was watching, they had a thing about kind of where everything's going and from their perspective. And for those that don't know, their investment vehicle is called A16Z. And they invest in a ton of startups, and they're in like, what you call brand named startups. And they were admitting that the AI data centric ones have been getting hammered, right? Because it's a really tough space to be in. And more broadly, everything they do is that, right? Now, I think they actually are invested in one of the models, although I don't really remember if they're an OpenAI or whatever. But they live and breathe off of these things, right? And so they have to make a call like, is this thing going to survive the GPT-5, right? GPT-5 is supposed to be faster and combine everything into one and blah, 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 right? It's going to solve world peace. So how many things are going to die a month after GPT-5 comes out?
That's right. And let's go to the very top. The very first thing we mentioned was Cursor. Cursor has no model. Cursor is totally dependent on integrations to all the different models that are out there. They're mucking with their pricing plan, and you get restricted and throttled down if you do too much of Sonnet. Then you can switch over. They have no model. So what's really going to be interesting is, they're hiring all these people. They're trying to get into the enterprise space. Can they survive with no model, or is ChatGPT 5.1 going to come out that includes an IDE? Game over. Right. It's going to be interesting to see. Or behind the scenes, are they building their own model that is, super hyper focused on code and code generation? But they're just a wrapper around all the models. So.
Well, and can we just touch on that point? Because you mentioned this idea that they're getting throttled, right? I think Anthropic is one, right, that is starting to throttle depending on what plan you're on. And in a sense, it's a positive because Anthropic is saying that this subset of users who are using things like Cursor are putting such demand on Claude or Sonnet, or like, because it's so powerful. Like they're literally running 24/7. Like people are like using this as like a code cranking machine.
I would.
And now go back to our Chinese comparison and say your limitation is the amount of GPUs we have that we can serve up. Like you're going to fight for power, whatever, that whole machine money fight. But whatever we have available, like innovate, just go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they give it away. So it's a pretty crazy world that we're headed for.
So what was the last article that I didn't read? I didn't read the last one. We're going to riff on that, even though I'm coming in blind. It's a. Remember when we did that one, Mario, where we just came into it blind and you threw out 3 articles? That was some pretty good content. So I'm trying to provide some really fresh opinions.
Fresh take.
Yes.
We should have a little sound effect. Fresh take.
Fresh take. Yeah. I'll have to get that to our marketing department
Yeah. So again, like it seems like there's a little bit of a pattern here that I kind of take some things that Sam Altman says, and I try to avoid the hyping that he does because he does sometimes go into hype mode, and I kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive into them, right? Because it feels like there's always something behind his points that he makes. So he was at a particular banking conference, and he pointed to there are banks, I guess, that still use voice recognition as a way to confirm somebody's identity. And I can't imagine how pervasive that is. But he's like, listen, AI's already fully defeated that. You could take any of our voices off of this podcast and clone us and pass a voice recognition test. For me, what it really went to though was, okay, so you're in mortgage. How often does your loan officer call the lock desk and ask for something, right? Well, what's to prevent somebody from cloning that and changing it, right?
Oh yeah,
and changing what they do. And it goes to how easy it's going to be to have AI fake documents, and like there's so many pieces of our ecosystem that people are going to have to rethink the way they're doing business, right? Forget building something to security, yes, but there's whole things I think you're just going to throw out and say, no, we're not doing that anymore. At least that was my take.
Yeah, and I think you're kind of touching on technology that we've really focused on the e-close and the digital note, the having it in a vault and having ownership and a chain of ownership on the documents. And you could get into the point where even pay stubs, or if you don't have it validated with the individual vendor themselves, the company they work for, you could have it where any documentation they provide, you're going to have to integrate with someone who's doing some sort of blockchain or something that shows ownership and transfer of ownership all the way through.
I think day one certainty vendors are going to go through the roof.
Yeah.
I think day one certainty is
going to the source is the only other way. I mean, you got to get the raw data from the person. I mean, it's like speaking, talk to the horse, right? Heard it right from the horse.
I will say, I was talking
horse's mouth. Isn't that the term? It's from the horse's mouth. Okay.
There you go.
The funny part is that Rob actually notices and laughs, and I just like, it's Kyle.
Yeah, it's me. I have a lot of analogies, and some are inaccurate as heck.
That's right. So Mario, when you said that the day one certainty vendors are going to go through the roof, you're talking about in a positive way, like they're going to own the marketplace because they have the centralized. Yes. Again, people don't understand and aren't in mortgage, because not everybody listening's in mortgage. The big player in mortgage banking secondary market is Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae has partnerships with some vendors to do things like employment verification, income verification, and so forth. So that what happens is as the lender, when you run through those services, that data that those services return to the lender to verify somebody's employment sticks in their database, and then they serve that directly up to Fannie Mae. So there's nobody else who can mess with and alter that data. So it's a trusted source of information. So yeah, they should, if I'm a lender and I've got my buyer of loans is saying this, I trust this vendor's data, and it's easier to work with them because you don't have to send me a pay stub. That's the vendor I'm going to work with for sure, right?
Well, but it's more than that now, right? Because now there's going to be a certain amount of fraud capability on the key documents that lead into that. And you're going to have buybacks for fraudulent loans. Yeah. And now you're basically saying now it's even more of a cost benefit than it was. Before it was convenient, right? And yes,
it was efficient, it was speedier.
Now it's going to be like, I can see that on average, my buyback cost is X over my portfolio of loans because of the ones where I don't do that.
Yeah.
And so it's worth it for me to force it. Whereas I think they've been nice with borrowers. You want to do it? Cool. You don't? That's all right.
Well, right? And eventually I think it's going to be like, Credit Karma that comes back with a number, right? They don't give you a big report. They don't give you all this stuff. You could go to any mortgage portal, and the future is you put in your key information, and it comes back with it does all the D1C stuff on your VOE, VOD, verification, VOI, VORs, all that stuff electronically, a lot of Vs.
I'm thinking about everybody who doesn't follow mortgage.
Yeah, they're like,
verification of employment, verification of income, verification of assets, verifications of rent. All of these things can come back electronically along with your credit report and a social media scan and everything else. And it's going to come back with a score that says, yeah, this guy's a good risk, and up to this dollar amount, he's a good risk. And that will be it. I mean, Fannie Mae could go direct clients. They wouldn't need.
They can't by their charter.
Well, they can't under the current structure.
Yeah.
But under a future structure, maybe they could. I don't know if that'd be the best thing for them right now, even if they had that power. So I think it would be probably a different market that needs to be there for them to go direct.
So I've got a tip around this for you guys, for everybody listening. With my financial planner, banker guys, we met in person, and I shared with them a phrase. And I said, anytime I'm going to ask you to move money in or out of my account, I'm going to verbally share this phrase with you. It will never be in writing between us. And I will tell you when it changes, and it will only change when we're seeing each other. And I can't think of any other better, secure way because like you said, I'm on this podcast, my voice can be cloned easily. Somebody can make a call, and they already have the security set up that if we're going to do any wiring, I have to do a verbal verification before the wire goes out. That verbal verification now includes this spoken phrase. And if I don't say it and say it right, it ain't going to go out. If I'm a mortgage banker dealing with wirings for customers,
right,
set that up, not in writing. Don't do it in an email that can get intercepted. Like, have a conversation, come up with the phrase, and say, when the wire is going to go out, I'm going to call you. You're going to answer. We're going to share this secret phrase, and if we don't do it, we're not shipping this wire out.
So we actually have that for our family. Like we have a keyword, right? So that if somebody calls, because there's been so many of these scams, right, where somebody calls and said, "Oh, I'm stuck somewhere. I need money. Wire me money," and it sounds just like their relative kid, whatever, It's crazy that we have to do that, and it does not. I'm not worried about this tomorrow, but are they going to basically be able to disrupt the biometric things like fingerprints and things like that too? Because it seems that reasonable that you should be able to fake those too.
No. Then I got to wear gloves everywhere.
Have you not?
We're like the criminals.
Impossible movies. Come on, man, they're doing.
Yeah. So
I just started thinking of our safe phrase, and and I can't repeat it obviously.
That's safe for work.
Yeah, it's no, it's not like that. I mean, it's just, I can't tell you what it is, but it's funny. We made it funny.
Tell us what it is, Kyle.
No,
go ahead. Say it on open air.
By the way, right?
We made it funny so that we would remember it, because humor is something that sticks and people remember a good joke. And
all right, Google it's Kyle's favorite movie.
No.
So back to seriousness.
None of that stuff.
I will also say that I invest. I'm an investor in a cybersecurity firm called Sciemptive. Very, very sophisticated, advanced cybersecurity protection that is out there. And what I've learned in meetings that I had with them and the work that I did with them years ago, I power off and power on my phone every night. I bounce my router in my home more frequently than most people would consider to be normal because the bad actors are out there and they can get onto your devices and they install themselves into the memory of the device. Rebooting it kicks them out. Right? They may not be able to write to and alter your router forever, but if they hack in and get in, you reboot your router and they're out. Right?
Great tip.
And
That's a great simple thing people can do, and it's
and your devices all work faster because you're like rebooting your machine, that type of thing. The other day, sitting on the couch with my wife, we're watching TV. We use Arrow for our Wi-Fi in our house, and I got an alert that a new device attached to my Wi-Fi route, network, and we're both sitting there going, "There's just two of us, no one else is around." So
dog.
I have the ability through their software to kick that person, kick that device out, and then I rebooted everything. But be aware. There's bad actors
Yeah.
are out there, and you
I
have
named my
to them.
I named my network ransomware, and no one seems to want to jump on.
That's spectacular.
Just to add a little note there.
I love it.
Okay, well I
So,
think that
what did we
may
learn?
have put us a pin on it. So Mario, do you want to summarize what we
Yeah.
learned today?
So I think a lot of what we proved today is that there's a lot more ground for AI to continue to grow and expand and do more, right? Both in coding, ton of opportunity, right? As great as it's doing, there's a lot of upside there. The war, we'll call it a war between the model for China versus the US, is absolutely something to keep watching. This low cost thing, and does that ultimately come back to all of this investment in infrastructure, and then fraud in general. Like AI's going to advance an agenda here on security broadly, and people listening to this, you're going to change the way you do business because of these threats that are out there.
Well, I already know that the anti-money laundering and know your customer, those consultants out there, because I've spoken to a few recently, they are extremely active and busy trying to get those types of conversations with the banks and the financial institutions they work with, because it is getting, I'm going after a Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, something like that. Yeah, you may run into a little more sophisticated blocks, you would think, but maybe not. But going to the local credit union and or savings and loan in your local town may not have the, right now have the budget to really do much past physical verifications and things like that, voice and those things. And I think we do need to make sure that whatever new technology is available, we have to be able to get it to the smaller banks and smaller financial institutions. Those are where you could really hurt the center and the core of America, because a lot of people don't do all their banking with Bank of America and Wells and Chase and Merrill, and well, Merrill's not anymore. Sorry, I dated myself.
You dated yourself. Yeah.
They are Bank of America, but it's one of those things that if we don't solve that security issue in a way was reasonable 10 years ago, then I just think we're less secure now than we were 10 years ago because of AI and because of money launderers and money fraudsters always are a step ahead because they have to be. So
right, and every dollar that gets spent having to worry about securing your infrastructure, everything you have, every dollar spent there is one less dollar on innovation.
Yeah, I know that at the company I work with, we spent a lot of. We had a very, very good network security manager. I think Mario, you've met him or talked to him, and his only job was to keep the company out of the papers, keep him out of the newspapers, and he did a good job of that. In fact, he did an awesome job. And it's one of those things where if you don't have good people, you need good technology and good enough people. And I don't know if the technology is moving fast enough, as fast as AI is moving. So that's another thing to watch out for. But so what did we do to this last week in AI? Does anyone have any stories? I do not.
Mine is really simple. So, and it's not
Wait, hold on. Before you share yours, is this something you actually did with AI?
We'll see. I don't know. Like, wait, you got to wait for the punchline.
Okay.
We're going to do the evaluation. So let's
Yeah.
start checking it off, Rob. Let's make sure we hit all the check boxes.
1 or a 10 at the end, and you tell me. Super simplistic. So in the context of the ChatGPT agent, right, which is supposed to be these more complex things, I have quite a few things that now show up in my inbox every morning automatically from my AIs. So I've got my AIs I have certain things that are recurring, right? And so...
Oh, well, you're nice, Rob. I was going to give him a 7.5.
Yeah. The Russian judge gave me a 7.
The Russian judge. Why'd you say he's a Russian judge?
No. He gave me a 10. Don't do that. That was the joke back when we were young, boy.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's like every judge gives him a 10, except for the Russian judge gives him a 7.
Nadia Comaneci.
Yeah. So,
although she was really good. But
so
anyway.
and listen, for me, that's like, my job isn't necessarily a cookie cutter job. I'm doing 50 different things every day, but if I can just streamline a couple of pieces, it does make life easier, right? Because now I have these things sitting in my inbox, and I can get to them when it's appropriate for me to get to them. I don't have to squeeze them in or whatever else. So for me, that was a nice little thing. I'm going to throw one other thing out there. This is both overly simplistic, but for me was super powerful, and I stole it from somebody else. The simplest of prompts. And I happened to be creating a presentation. I had a slide deck that was kind of like just call it a presentation. And the prompt is, I'm going to curse, AI, be the biggest asshole in the world and be super critical in every way you can think of this presentation, and give me the critical feedback that is going to keep me from being embarrassed to present any aspect of this. And it's like using the kind of the negative take on that persona. And I will tell you, it did a fantastic job of stuff that I probably would not have elicited otherwise in the way I would have worked with AI. So for me, that was like a super simple learning on prompt engineering.
You should create one called Siskel and Ebert, and you can do for all these older folks that are listening to this, Siskel and Ebert were movie critics. So maybe
and also in today's New York Times crossword puzzle.
Oh, all right.
Mario, I'm giving you 2 10s. That is 2 uses of AI.
Wow, I'm a 20.
Yes,
yeah.
Tell my wife.
You are 20.
Turn it upside down when you go to me, because I got to, although
you said you didn't use any, right? So you got a 0.
Yeah, 0, 1.
All right. So I use AI every day for all sorts of different things, but I want to share a story from a friend of mine who used it in a way that is unfamiliar to me. I did a class to a group of seniors about 4 or 5 months ago on an introduction to AI basics and so forth, and got them to feel comfortable with it. So flash forward, Mickey is into dreams, and she remembers her dreams very much, and she's very spiritual, and she believes in the life between lives, and she's a very cool, one of the nicest positive people I've ever met. She's now using ChatGPT to analyze her dreams and her meditations. Wow. And it's amazing. So she has shared a couple with me where, she'll here's my dream, and she'll type it out, and it'll go through, and the more history that she has, and she's building her history in the Canvas module. So it's got this longer memory of all of her dreams. It's starting to wrap ideas together and concepts together. It's brilliant. It's very, very interesting, and exposing her to different dimensions of ways of thinking about spirituality. And it's really cool. So I never, I'm such a technical geek. I always think about, coding this and help me with that and speed this up. And she's like getting into the spirituality and tying AI into it. So I don't know if it's something I'm going to jump into and try. I rarely remember my dreams, but wanted to throw that out there there's lots of people listening who fall into that camp. I never thought of doing that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'd be afraid to put my dream into that, because then they'd be like, that's the stupidest dream I've ever heard of.
You need to go to a doctor soon.
Exactly.
You're way too old for school, and put some clothes on.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what would happen to me. But Well, I think that's going to do it for us today. Any?
Well, I think I had to give Rob
Thank
his
you.
time,
Oh,
Thank you.
awesome! I'm gonna go.
and that's
I don't-
Kyle.
Yeah, thank you. That's like, isn't that the General Lee? Is 01? Isn't that the?
Wow,
No idea what you're talking about, bro.
I don't know if the General. I can't remember. Anyway, well, I'm Kyle
I am wearing a
Meyers.
shirt from the 80s. Does that help?
You know what? I was going to say something about that. That is an awesome shirt, Rob.
you.
I absolutely love that. I'm a fan of the 80s. I went on a cruise recently, and it's a Christian music cruise, and they had an 80s night, and I dressed up, and I looked like something right out of it was a cross between Beastie Boys and Miami Vice. I don't know which one it was.
Nice.
But that shirt is absolutely awesome. All you need is those sunglasses with the bars across.
Right.
You'd be set.
Yeah.
But anyway, on that note, I'm Kyle Meyers.
I'm Rob Katz.
And I'm still Mario DiBenedetto.
And this has been the AI Riff.
Wires hum like whispers in the deep dark night. Shadows dancing strange under neon light. Digits spinning fast like a gambler's hand. The clock chimes change, it's the new command. Oh, the future calls with a voice so clear. A melody of progress in every ear. No turning back, the wheels in motion. A tide of cold like the endless ocean. Binary prophets riding fading streams. Data flows like rivers fueling all our dreams. Simple or savvy, it's all the same path. Under skies of innovation, we redraw the map. Oh, the future calls with a voice so clear. A melody of progress in every ear. No turning back, the wheels in motion. A tide of cold like the endless ocean. Set the rhythm to the beat of change we sing. Every click and hum a key that rings. A revolution, quiet, but it's vast. Building empires where echoes of futures cast. Oh, the future calls with a voice so clear. A melody of progress in every ear. No turning back, the wheels in motion. A tide of cold like the endless ocean.